Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 15th, 2025 business meeting for the Worcester Township Board of Supervisors. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? My name is Rick DeLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Lou Betts, who's our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, who's our third member. Over on the side table, we have Wendy McKenna, who's here from our solicitor's office, and John Everts, who is here from our engineer's office. On the back table, we have Christian Jones, who's the assistant township manager, and Dan Domino, who is our township manager. We also have Nicole, our finance director, who's in the front row, will be part of our budget conversation in a little bit. First and foremost, do we have any informational items for the board tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this meeting is being recorded for future broadcast. And there is a Perkiomen Valley 250 presentation on America's 250th birthday preparations.
Thank you, Christian. Emily, why don't you come forward? I do. I want you make sure the green light is on, sign your name in there, tell us who you are, and then share what you need to share with us.
Great. So my name is Emily Sneff. I am here representing Perkiomen Valley 250. This is a regional initiative to mark the 250th anniversary of not only the Declaration of Independence, but the important revolutionary events that happened in this area over the next couple of years. On the screen, I have a few of our key goals for this initiative. First and foremost, we want to increase regional tourism as well as residents' engagement with historic sites and nonprofit organizations during the ongoing 250th. So from 2026 through 2028, the end of the Valley Forge encampment. And our goal is to use local history as a catalyst for economic development, driving interest to our communities, businesses, restaurants, and hotels, increasing in community engagement, bringing folks together around these anniversaries, and creating a point of civic pride. As our a sort of collective, Perkiomen Valley 250 wants to coordinate fundraising, branding, and marketing to meet all of these needs. Next slide. I'm a historian and consulting curator at Historic Chap. And Lisa Minardi, who's the executive director at Historic Chap, is my co-collaborator in this effort. We're joined tonight by our board president, Keith McLennan, and a number of our board members are residents of Worcester Township. And we've been going around to area municipalities and having these kinds of conversations to try to solidify the region of the Perkiomen Valley. But really the core of our interest comes from being historic site operators and thinking about how to engage the public. Historic Trap has a number of things happening over the next few years, including the grand opening of the Speaker's House next April after a 25-year community-led restoration effort to save it from demolition and turn it into a center for civic education and for basically bringing attention to the founding father in our own backyard, Frederick Muhlenberg. We also have a special exhibition that will be open through the winter of 2028, focusing on Pennsylvania Germans' experience of the American Revolution. And you can see on the screen there, we were chosen as one of the sites for America 250 PA, the State Commission's Bells Across PA initiative. So we have one of only two bells in Montgomery County. The other one is at Washington Memorial Chapel. And this bell celebrates Pennsylvania German folk art and Proctor. We also have a team of historians, museum educators, connections with reenactors, development folks. So we have the resources and the skills to put into this effort, but we need to bring other nonprofits as well as municipal and corporate sponsors on board so everyone can work together towards a common purpose. Next. So just to quickly highlight some of our programs and strategies that we have in mind, we want to create easily accessible information about hotels, restaurants, parks, trails, historic sites, and special events, including all of the 4th of July events that are going to be happening next year. So we're thinking a website that creates a calendar, itineraries, maps, everything that people coming to this area or people living in this area will need. We're also thinking about the value of free admission to participating historic sites, including historic trap. When we do the sort of market value analysis, this is a huge sort of amount of money that we're giving up to offer free admission to folks, but it's beneficial to get people in our doors who might not otherwise come, and it creates that sort of community bonding experience. We are also working on a Revolutionary War traveling trunk program. This is a sort of proven method for engaging, especially younger learners, in the local history of the Revolutionary War. This is a program that we can develop with our trained museum educators and then send out to Parks and Rec buildings, libraries, and other sites. So basically, you buy all of the stuff once rather than everyone committing resources for their own version of this. And then, of course, we're also thinking about branded clothing and keepsakes, things that emphasize the unique 250th experience that you can get in this area because of our history. Some of our essential expenses, we need to have dedicated personnel for this effort. Lisa Minardi and myself, we both wear a number of hats, including right now coordinating PV 250. And we recognize by looking at other regional 250th efforts, including Lehigh Valley 250, that there need to be some dedicated marketing and social media folks, event folks to go out and actually document the events that are happening, engage with the public. Um, we're also thinking about, of course, the website, all of the expenses that go into that, having a clear branding and marketing strategy, basically pooling our resources to access the billboards, the TV and radio ads, things that would be impossible for historic sites to do on their own, that would take up their entire budget for the year, but that we can all do collectively. We're also thinking about public safety and coordination. So we want to encourage people to visit sites, to explore our trails and open spaces, but we also want to make sure they're safe when doing so, and that when we have major events, police, EMTs, fire, they all know what's happening and can coordinate together. So signage and other things that could help with that and making sure that people have their accessibility needs met. Um, and as I mentioned, this is a multi-year initiative. So when we're going out and having conversations, we're not talking about a check today. We're talking about sustained support through 2028. And so our different sponsorship levels are broken up over the next 2 years to kind of alleviate some of that financial burden and allow folks to plan ahead for budgets to come in the future. So far, we have 3 municipal sponsors who have come on board and many others with whom we're in conversation. Upper Providence Township is our founding level sponsor. That's $50,000 over the next 3 years. And then Stratboro and Perkiomen Township are both at the $25,000 level, what we're calling our keystone sponsors. We have sponsorship levels that go from $50,000 all the way down to $250 for a lawn sign. So we're trying to create benefits at the different levels to meet the needs of residents in each municipality that we're talking to. You can see here, and you're welcome to take a look at the PDF that I emailed to Dan, our municipal sponsorships table that lays out all of those different options. So at the top tiers of municipal sponsorship, we have recognition as well as lawn signs with QR codes and the PV250 website to direct people to that information, as well as a certain number of traveling trunk programs and premium placement and market materials of the parks, trails, hotels, and restaurants in your municipality. But at every level, there are different benefits and opportunities that might make more sense for your municipality. So this is not set in stone. We can adjust if there are things that are particularly attractive. For example, the smaller municipalities are really interested in the revolutionary traveling trunk program. So maybe all of their support goes towards that. Next. And just to note, We are bringing on nonprofit partners. This is not just a historic trap effort. We want to think about the county sites, the other historic sites, the nonprofit organizations, the open space organizations. And the purpose of bringing on municipal and corporate sponsors is to offset the expense for our nonprofit partners. So for just $250 per year, our nonprofit partners will have access to this high-powered marketing strategy, as I said, opportunities they wouldn't be able to pursue on their own, as well as regional calendars, maps, itineraries, basically creating a day trip, a weekend trip, a week-long trip in this region. And then opportunities for special programs, not just the Revolutionary War traveling trunk, but other things. Thinking, for example, about the fall of 2027, when everyone is going to be thinking about the Continental Army moving through this area, where Washington slept. There's a lot of opportunities for collaboration. Next. So our next steps are securing municipal sponsorships. We're also communicating with potential corporate sponsors, from the large employers in the area all the way to the Main Street small businesses that will benefit from increased foot traffic. And I should note that Lisa Minardi and myself are both locals. I went to Springford. Lisa went to Perkiomen Valley and Ursinus. I literally got my hair cut across the street yesterday at the hairdresser I've been going to since I was a child. So we have a sort of relationship with this area and an understanding that is really crucial. And we want to bring attention here. We want to highlight our local businesses, get people out of Philadelphia, up from Valley Forge, and into this area. We're also going to be having an informational meeting next week with potential nonprofit partners. And so that'll be the first step to getting them on board at that $250 per year level. I think that's everything. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the different sponsorship levels or plans or the other municipal sponsors that we're pursuing. But I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Emily. So timing's pretty good, in terms of it is budget season and all those sorts of things. I know we've actually had some solicitations. The governor sent us something on year 52 stuff with the trails and some different things that so the messaging is starting to come out from a variety of sources. Dan is the right point of contact for us in terms of routing through all that stuff, and he'll make sure. I know that he sent us the PDF just a couple of days ago. I don't know. I know I haven't had a chance to get through it, but certainly we'll make sure that that's part of our conversations in terms of sponsorships and things of that nature. We obviously I can't commit anything in as we're seeing it for the first time, but certainly we have a very strong historical society in Worcester. I'm sure you know. Certainly, we value that sort of stuff highly in the township, and certainly we'll want to make sure we take a good look and see if there's things that we can help with in terms of that. Any comments, Steve?
No, just a couple of things, Mr. Chairman. We live in an area that's so rich in history, being involved in the farming community. And it was a family in Worcester by the name of Hebners, and we have our big park down there, Hebner Park. They were one of the first families inventing a lot of the agricultural equipment that was used across the country. We have Hatfield Packing, Mopac, and Longacre, which produced the meat and the poultry for the East Coast way back when. So, and then education-wise, we have the Germantown Academies, the Baldwin School, we have Bryn Mawr College, your sign is right here. So this part of Montgomery County was really a hub of beginning of our country's history. So I think it's important. And we have been involved, the people in Worcester, through the Historical Society, and we know history's a very important part of our past and our future, because the past sometimes dictates the future going forward, and that's important. So I think we, the township, would, as Rick said through Dan, be very interested in trying to be involved in this program going forward. So to you being involved in it, thank you for doing that. It takes people to step forward, and usually it's hard to find people to get involved. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
I thank you for your presentation. You're very passionate about what you're doing. So, I mean, this is our anniversary for 250 years military, and thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you much. So I got one more informational item, and then we'll get into the core of the meeting. I just wanted to take a minute. We had Worcester Community Day a couple of weeks back. I had the opportunity to come by for a while. I want to do two things. One is I want to specifically thank Dan and the township staff, in particular Dustin, who did a lot of the planning around that. It was a really good event. It was a good day. Weather held out. We had been trying to get back on track with Community Day the last few years. I also had an opportunity to talk to a number of the vendors that came and participated, and certainly the feedback we got was very positive. I also want to publicly thank the Worcester Fire Department. They were a big part of that day and really big anchor, something about the trucks and the kids and the sirens and all that good stuff. But I know Dan was there with his kids. I know that we had a few hundred people that participated, so a good day all around. And I just wanted to make sure that we thank the right people and make sure that next year, I know it's in our budget with some money, but I was glad to have a chance to participate with that. So moving forward, first item on our agenda is public comment. We do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board tonight? Bill.
Bill McGrain. Today I'm here as the president of the Farmers Union. I have an appropriate topic from what was just discussed. So I got an email last night that prompted me into action, and so I'm going to move along here. President of the Farmers Union Company for the Recovery of Stolen Horses and Detecting the Thieves. The company was formed in 1834, 191 years ago. We are one of only 3 farm union companies left in the country that are still active. Locally known as the Farmers Union, it was formed as a self-insurance company. We had a posse, and we had a police force, and we had a fire department associated with this because there were no county services at the time in Worcester. You could be a member of there were restrictions for the Farmers Union membership, but anyone in the community could call on them for assistance. Membership quickly, almost all the adults in the township joined. The company was primarily the nonprofit, non-religious social organization in Worcester throughout the 1800s. In the beginning in 1900s, with mechanization and telephones and transportation and the state police, the local farming community did not require the mission of the Farmers Union as it had in the past. In the late 1930s, at the end of the Depression, members of the Farmers Union were looking to keep the old traditions alive and bring the community together. And so they started the Farmers Union Parade and Horse Show, which started in roughly where Methacton High School is, ran down Germantown Pike, came into the property behind us. The parade went for 60 years. The horse show is still going on. We're in our 85th year. In the late 1950s, members of the Farmers Union, World War II veterans, Korean War veterans, and local residents decided Worcester needed a fire department. And in 1959, Worcester Fire Department was founded with financial, equipment, and property support from Worcester Township. In the early 1970s, members of the Farmers Union, along with other residents, recognized the bicentennial was approaching. The township had a strong historical story to tell, and in 1975, the Worcester Historical Society was formed. In the 1950s, Worcester Township took possession of the building in Centers Point known as the Farmers Union Hall, which was an offshoot of the Farmers Union Company. In 1996, Worcester Township began leasing that property to the Horse Historical Society at a nominal cost as a form of support for this for the Historical Society. In 2023, I believe that was the year, the township purchased the old Duchy Church, which the Historical Society could no longer upkeep. In 1905, members of the Farmers Union Company, along with some residents in Fairview Village here, formed the Fairview Assembly and constructed this building. The reason for this was to have a community center, recreational facility for the people of Fairview Village, similar to what was available to them in Center Point. Roughly during the Depression, Worcester took control of this property because that organization could not upkeep it. The horse show grounds behind us flourished for decades, including a lit ring, flagpoles, announcer's booth, large gateway arch on Griffith Road. In the mid 2000s, John Heiser, who had purchased the Titlow Farm in Fairview Village, which was the grounds of the horse show, announced that he had intentions to develop properties in Fairview Village, including that property. Farmers Union worked with the Board of Supervisors at that time to obtain a county open space grant to cover much of the purchase price of the horse show grounds. Worcester took possession of the property at that time. A little bit about the membership. The original 1834 membership criteria was you needed to be a male business or farm owner within 4 miles of Fairview Village. Soon after, that was changed to needed to be a male who rented, owned a business or a farm. Soon after that, it was changed to include sons of farmers who had livestock which needed insurance, still lived at home. Farmers Union was one of the first companies in the country, when there were still a lot of them, to allow women to be a member when one of the farmers died suddenly and the wife inherited the farm, and the Farmers Union said, that's okay. And soon after that, daughters were included in the self-insurance program. When the self-insurance program ceased to be important during the Depression, the 4-mile radius was dropped. Today's membership is open to any person who can conduct themselves with decorum and within the bylaws of the company. A little bit about who has been a member. The current Worcester Board of Supervisors is only the third configuration of supervisors in which none of the members of the board are a Farmers Union member. Historically, it is more common that all of the supervisors were members of the Farmers Union rather than none. Obviously, membership has included Worcester Township supervisors, but we've also included supervisors from East Norriton, Lower Providence, and Skippack Township. And in fact, the Skippack supervisor is currently a member of the Farmers Union. We've had many county commissioners. We've had 2 of the 3 county commissioners at one time be members. We've had state representatives and state senators. We've had congressmen and a U.S. senator. We've had cabinet members, and there is a legend that Drew Lewis paid for Ronald Reagan's membership in the Farmers Union. Those records aren't available, and we'll get to that. During COVID, our membership fell during the lockdown to 8. But that was very common with nonprofits. The Lower Providence Historic Society shut down during COVID and has not reopened. Today, Farmers Union has 71 members. So why am I here? Currently, the Farmers Union assets, equipment, and records are kept throughout the township and neighboring townships in barns, garages, sheds, basements, offices, and with the Historical Society. As you know, we lose a barn or 2 every year to development, conversion, or neglect in the township. In the fall of 2022, Worcester Township acquired a farm on Fisher Road, which includes a home, outbuildings, and a refurbished barn. In October of 2022, This board, in response to public comment question, said the planning commission will make recommendations regarding the use of the site. In the last 3 years, as the president of the Farmers Union, I've asked 3 different township managers basically the same question. What is the plan for Fisher Road property, and when can we, the oldest organization in the township, make a request for favorable lease of some of the empty barn space? Each manager has responded he'll take the question to the board and get back to me with a response. I'm still waiting. I don't blame Dan in this case. I've had correspondence with him about the inquiry, but never with an answer or a timeline. Technically, the answer that we received 3 years ago didn't have a timeline. I don't think that anyone is accepting that. We have a 200-year-old historical wagon, which is deteriorating every day because we cannot afford housing for it. Currently, much of our horse show equipment is sitting in the ring behind this building, nowhere to go. Two things can happen at once. The parks and programs of the township are not going to shut down during the planning commission's mission that you're sending them on about properties. We're asking why has this been stalled? Repeatedly asked the question, bringing it out in public because I'm getting no answer. I can go further.
No, I think we're good. I think you've shared the concern there, Bill. I think we've heard the concern. I think we'll take it internally, certainly, and look to get you a more definitive answer on both the property on Fisher Road as well as how we can navigate forward with some of the concerns that you have. I don't know if anybody has any specific comments they want to add. Obviously, we weren't prepared for your comments, so I don't want to just throw something off the cuff without having a chance to digest it a little bit.
I'd like to follow that up. On March 17th, I sent an email to Dan because the Historic Society had an opportunity to acquire an original delivery wagon from Cedars Country Store. They had no place to put it. There's also a trove of historic farming equipment available in the barns at the Norristown State Hospital, which are soon to be torn down. And the Historic Society has nowhere to put it. We have a 200-year-old wagon with nowhere to put it. So I put that all in an email to Dan, and he responded that he received it, and that was on March 17th. On March 19th, Dan met with the Historic Society. On March 20th, Jim Thompson, president of the Historic Society, sent me an email. And the email says, manager says barn will be available. May need to sign $1 lease and sign a hold harmless. One of the persons who was in that meeting is in this room and can verify now whether it's true or not true, depending on where Jim Thompson also sent a follow-up email the next day.
Bill, you've said what you had to say. We're going to take this offline. If you want to share all of that information with the board, that's fine. We're not going to solve it right here with you at the table. But
so no answer is a no. So you've had 3 years to say yes, and so no answer is yes. So you're not supporting a 191-year-old organization. You are saying it's been 3 years of saying it by not doing anything. And here's the follow-up email from Dan. Haven't forgotten about you. This is from May. Working on a consensus from board. You know what consensus means? Consensus means agreement of the group. So if there was no consensus, that means somebody disagreed with the idea of supporting the Farmers Union and preserving our historic property. And there's only 3 of you up there. And that means 2 of you are against it because you vote 2 to 1 all the time for things to happen. I have another email from last night from Jim Thompson offering to sublet me space in the township barn because they're not going to use it this season. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else wish to make public comment to the board tonight? Bert?
Bert Hines, Worcester. Tonight I'm speaking to you not just as a Worcester resident, but as the president of Friends of Worcester. And I came tonight on a pleasant note to invite all three of you supervisors and actually anyone under the sound of my voice in this room or whether it's on the TV, whatever, to an aerial presentation of the open space in Worcester. It's being held tomorrow evening. You may have heard some advertising for it. And it's at the Methacton School Planetarium, the middle school, over on Eagleville Road at 7 o'clock. We think it's informative. It's a neat venue for you to get a glimpse of the open space in this township. We've categorized it into preserved farms, places that are trails. We have lands that's preserved by trusts. We have homeowner association lands. We have state and county lands that are preserved within the township for parkland. So we think it'll be an interesting presentation. It's a presentation that we did back in March in the planetarium. And we had about 40 people attend at that time. We got some very positive feedback on that just because people saw it as an eye-opener and it gave them a visual graphic. They come to the meetings or they watch the meetings on the videos and they hear about open space, and they may drive down the roads and see some signs saying this property is permanently preserved, but it gave them a real visual of what preservation has been done, not just by this board, but by previous boards. So I invite all of you to join us tomorrow night. The good news is I'm not asking for any money. The price is right. The admission is free. And, certainly if you decide you want to give a free will offering to the Friends of Worcester, we would gladly accept that. But we want this available to everyone in the township, folks of all ages. It might not be appropriate for little kids only because of their attention span. The entire program will probably last 45 minutes to an hour. And unless there are questions that cause it to go beyond that. So again, I'm inviting anyone in this room or anyone who can see it on video to join us. So thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you, Bert. Appreciate it. Does anybody else wish to make public comment to the board tonight? Sure. Come forward.
Hey, good evening. Megan Mackey from Worcester Township. So I'm somewhat new to the township for the last couple of years. I live on the Creeble Mill Road section between Fawn Road and Stump Hall Road. Within this section of Creeble Mill, there are more than 12 children on this section of the road, ranging from school to elementary school ages. In this section of our Creeble Mill, there are 0 speed limit signs. And as you would expect, we frequently experience cars coming down our road at really high speeds. This is especially concerning for us on school days. We are all down at the end of our driveways, right on the road, right there's no shoulder, and our children are waiting for the bus there with us, of course. We have frequently had situations where cars are speeding so fast in the morning that they aren't even able to stop for the bus. So I had a recent for the kids to cross to go to get on the bus, even with the stop sign out. Back in September, I had an incident with one of my children where a car stopped about 4 feet from him, screeching tires. So it was a little bit alarming, obviously, as anyone could imagine. I did, back in September, call the township office. I had the pleasure of speaking with Dan about these concerns. And we do have several families that are very concerned with this for obvious reasons. And we're asking that there's a dedicated effort by the township to address these safety concerns on this road. I'd like to request that we implement a solution for some targeted speed control on this section of Crable Mill Road. And a preferred option would be installing speed humps on this particular section. And if that's not feasible from a budget perspective, we'd at the very least, we need at least some speed limit signs with some speed monitoring devices as well. So we're just looking for some support from the township and maybe get that considered during the budget for next year.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that I can comment on directly, and then certainly stuff we need to take offline. So we don't, there's nowhere in the township with speed bumps. There's not a single road in any corner or pocket, so that's typically not a scenario. Speed's absolutely a concern. We've got areas throughout the township with the state police versus a local police force. That's one of the areas that speed monitoring is a challenge. You know, that said, signage and things of that nature are certainly things that we can take a look at for sure. I know the area that you're talking about, but not the exact,
Yep.
you know, situation. If you've shared that with Dan in terms of the specific area, we certainly make sure with Public Works and the engineer, we can get a look at it and,
Okay, great.
you know, get some sense of what is a way to potentially address that. But certainly, I know Steve can comment on it, I know Luke can comment on it as well, that certainly speed is, you know, sort of the number one piece of feedback we get with concerns on a number of the roads throughout the township, both in terms of pass-through concerns and then just, you know, speed in terms of the best way to monitor and things like that. So we certainly recognize the concern. If there's things we can do, we certainly want to take a look at that. But there, I do want to be clear that the speed bumps are typically, we get asked,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Fairness.
it's, yeah, and I think it's even when people turn onto the road, you know how your car will tell you with your GPS or whatever, if it sees a speed limit sign, it goes black, right? So people are just assuming whatever they're assuming just on the road. And we have a lot of deer, as pretty much everyone does in this township. And I have had people like at night hit a deer right in front of my house, and the deer is like, you know, 100 yards from their car, and they say they were going 25 miles an hour, but we know that's not true
Right.
at night. So it's just alarming, right? Our kids, our houses are set back, right? The kids don't play in the road. But we have a pretty high population that we haven't had on the road in several years now. And so the mornings are rather stressful, and I think it's just,
Fair enough.
the buses do what they can, but it's just not safe. So we're just looking for some support from you guys.
We appreciate that, and just make sure that, I could just ask you to sign your name on the sheet, that would be great, and I'll make sure we get with Dan and
Just, Mr. Chairman, so you know, I've talked to Bob the Holster, who's our Public Works Director. We do have some speed monitoring signs that we're in process of replacing a couple pieces of pretty low-level stuff, but that strip is on the list to have one of the temporary speed signs deployed to try to do some monitoring.
okay.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, just to follow up to Rick's comment, the Variety Club, who was the guy kept coming in about the Variety Club over there?
Diesel, John Diesel.
John. And 5, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, he kept coming about it. And I guess PennDOT and the state, speed bumps was a no. It's not something they encourage.
Okay.
So we were down that road a number of years and a number of times. Something I find interesting, I drive through Lancashire County and Chester County early in the mornings. Their buses straddle the road,
Sometimes they do. Mhm.
and the cars can't get through, so it automatically blocks it. And until the bus comes to a stop in the middle of the road, the,
Yeah, you
the
can.
flashers go on. So I find that interesting. Meth Acton doesn't do that. You know, they sort of, our roads are narrow, and everyone's in a hurry to get to work. Everyone's in a hurry to get somewhere. And I think it'd be maybe something with the school district that the drivers behind it don't like it, but safety really is paramount for the children getting on. Our roads can hardly fit 2 cars, but if the school bus would block, especially on the back roads here, it's really a problem.
Yep.
And most people use our roads for cut-throughs, getting to 422 or getting to the turnpike. So I think maybe if we can work, maybe just mention it to the school district, I don't see our buses in our district straddling the road,
Right.
especially on the back roads. And I think that would be something for the safety aspects to really help the children.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be helpful if you guys are able to connect with them. I don't know. Our bus driver last year did do that. And we have a different bus driver this year who seems to be just staying on the side. But, you know, it seems to be not consistent, but if that's something we could,
I'm sure that Dan can communicate that with the school district and make sure that that concern is expressed.
awesome. Great. Thanks
Thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
Okay, does anybody else have any public comment for the board tonight? Excellent, so we move forward. First up, we've got official action items. We start with our consent agenda. First and foremost, as I always ask, does anybody wish to remove anything from our consent agenda tonight? I think the answer to that is yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to remove the workshop meeting minutes, just a simple clarification on public comment. And other than that, I'll make a motion that we can approve the business meeting minutes for September 17, the treasurer's report, monthly reports for September of 2025, and the bill payments for September of 25 in the amount of $777,568.16.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. First up, under motions, we're going to have a discussion and potentially a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-17, approving final land development for Meadowood Healthcare Northeast expansion. Who's taking the lead? Kate? All right.
I'm Kate Harper here for Meadowood, and we also have Tim Woodrow, our engineer, and Paul Nordeman's here, and Marlon Bach, and we got somebody else too. I forget anybody? Okay. Do you want a presentation, or are you familiar with what we're doing? I'll just say gently that we are expanding the healthcare center. We're adding a net of 8 beds, 30 new beds. We're moving some beds around, and we're doing things like that. And we've been to the zoning board, and we've been to the planning commission, and we're happy to do a presentation. Tim can explain everything. Basically, the health center's in the middle of the campus, and this is an addition to it. We're taking down a 3-story stairwell, and we're adding like a loop to it. Not an engineering term. Tim's better at that than I am.
So I would say if Tim could maybe give us an abbreviated, I know you were here in April for preliminary approval. I know I remember some of the details. I don't remember all of the details. He could maybe sort of take us through at a high level. I know there'll be a few questions through that, but I know
I know we have a slide that's a little closer to where we are. The planning commission was like the 4th or 5th slide that shows where we are, you know, on the campus. And if you can orient yourself, that's Skipback Pike on the bottom. There it is. Yeah. Okay, Tim, take over.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, and to your point, Mr. Lella, we were here in April talking about our preliminary plan application. At that time, we had the bones of the addition kind of laid out. We knew what we needed to do from a site plan perspective. We've got a little bit of a retaining wall to build. We've got utilities to move. But back in April, we really hadn't really defined to any great extent the details of the construction of the building and how the site plan needed to support that building design. So in that intervening period, the architects have finished their work. They are kind of pencils down at this point. Our site plan now does accurately reflect what the building needs to support it. Very little major change in the site plan from what we showed you guys in April. Again, we've defined a bit better our stormwater management system. We've confirmed with the fire marshal and your traffic engineers the truck access and the truck turning radii, emergency service turning radii, to keep that loading dock and access to the physical plant operations center of the building operational as we build this addition. Again, it is a 3-story addition, matches very similar in architecture to what is adjacent to it. We have spent as much time with our residents. They obviously have had a lot of questions and concerns for us I guess very similar to concerns that this board may have with regard to aesthetics, landscaping, lighting, during construction impacts to the way they are enjoying their lives. All of that we feel we have really brought to closure. So barring any further questions, we're certainly happy to answer those. But we feel this plan is in a position that it is worthy of a final plan approval, again, with the conditions that are laid out in the proposed resolution.
Okay, Tim, so I'm going to ask, and I don't know, Kate, you want to answer this or Tim wants to answer this, but just some of the mechanics of it. So there's review letters. There's a CKS review letter from August. There's a Bowman letter from August. There's a Montgomery County letter from earlier this year. There's the zoning board determination, and they're all sort of referenced at various spots. And if you could just say for the record, just sort of confirm that you're good with every one of those
We are indeed.
items.
In fact, we have a revised plan that I don't know that CKS has fully reviewed yet, but the revised plans that are kind of in the file have addressed 99% of those questions. So yes, we are comfortable with compliance with those review letters,
Right,
yes.
so it's basically, we will comply with all the conditions that are listed in the resolution.
Right.
Also, there's a traffic impact fee.
Yep.
We understand that. Not gonna be a lot of traffic from this particular use because it's
Yep.
a health center. But we're fine, we're gonna pay that fee, and we need to add a few EDUs for sewage treatment. We're fine with that. And basically, all those
Right.
things were conditions, and we're gonna comply.
Understood. So you touched on one of my other questions, which you're asking for 3 additional waivers. So in the spring, I know we said yes to 4 of the waivers. There were 3 additional waivers. John, you can maybe chime in here. I always like to understand why we're being asked that so the board can decide collectively on the waivers. So I don't know, John, you want to take those, or Tim, you want to take these?
You want to start off?
I'm happy to take those, yes. I guess the 3 additional waivers that we are seeking, guys, one is related to the material that we're utilizing for the storm pipe construction. I believe that the intent of the ordinance is really for a publicly dedicated road as opposed to a private parking lot improvement. This HDPE pipe has really become a standard in the industry, and certainly for underground basins. And so, again, this is a private storm sewer installation that we think is more appropriately done with the plastic pipe as opposed to the concrete pipe. There are some internal rain gutter collection pipes that are less than 15 inches in diameter. I think, again, the ordinance was written with the intent of a public street storm sewer collection system, something that would be dedicated to the township. Again, this is a private internal storm sewer collection system that I don't know that the ordinance really intended to address. However, in the abundance of caution, we thought the waiver should be sought. And that final one was, the
Parking spaces.
parking spaces, yes.
Sure.
And they're short, but the parking spaces that are short, if you recall, we were describing those parking spaces as ones that were meant to deal with our little electric vehicles that go around and service the units around the campus. So these are not parking for passenger vehicles or delivery vehicles. They are the campus maintenance vehicles. So it's more like a golf cart rather than a car.
Gotcha. John, can you comment on that from your perspective, please, as our engineer?
So the 2 stormwater management waivers requested have been granted in the past for specifically this project. The prior phases, since it's privately owned and going to be maintained by Meadowwood, we don't have any objections to those.
Okay.
The smaller parking spots, they are labeled compact car parking. So it is labeled, going to be labeled in the field specifically for that vehicle.
Okay. Thank you. Steve, any comments, questions, concerns, or Lou?
I have a number of questions, but I'm working off the CKS report. And I remember in the past, there was a number of units that were in challenge. You were 23 and then you were 31. As I'm reading this, it says it's a partial basement for 8 personnel care and 31 beds. So is it 8 rooms and 31 beds? I mean, I'm just trying to understand this.
Yeah, and I think too, Mr. Betts, that the architecture has been evolving through that period of time. And so I think, Marlon, correct me, 38,
Marlon, it's 38.
38 total beds.
38. This says 31.
Well, it's-
38 beds.
and the plans say 39, so there's
39.
eight single units with one bed each, and then the rest is split up. 31. All right, so the plans say 31.
We'll edit the plan. Because that is one of the architectural modifications I think we have been working.
So back me up. Back up, slow down. We can't have everyone talking. I need you at the mic, whoever you speak, at the mic so we get you the recording. If we can confirm the specific numbers, please.
Architecture was done differently and later than the first set of plans. So I brought Marlon Bach out, who's more familiar with the architecture, and to talk about the beds and the neck beds and things like that.
Yes, the beds are designed that there are 8 suites on the first floor. There are 16 beds on the second floor, and there are 14 beds for the skilled nursing on the third floor. One of the rooms is big enough that they will house 2 people. That's where that original 39 number came up for licensing, and not bedrooms is what it was.
Okay, so it says 8 personal care and 31 healthcare beds. So
It comes to 39.
that's 39, but you're saying it's 38 because one of them could have been a double and it's going to be a single? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's
So it's one less actually than what's on the review letter. Does that sound right, John? Is that,
And on the plans.
and on the plans? So the plans obviously need to be,
Correct.
okay.
Updated.
It doesn't change the size of the building. It's all internal.
Right, that's the point. When we were doing the land development plans, we had the exterior calculations of how big the building is, what the footprint is and all like that. But the architectural plans were still under review, and so they ended up being slightly different than Tim had estimated on the plan.
Okay,
That's what happened.
okay. Continue with your questions, Lou?
And then on page 4, on the CKS, number 1, the project's gonna propose to disturb 0.64 acres. And then on the second part of that paragraph, it says the applicant engineer must provide confirmation from Montgomery County Conservation District that there's 2 projects, so you have 2 things going on. Are they gonna be more than an acre? So this is all techno stuff,
Yeah, Ms. Betts, correct. There was a time when we thought we needed to construct a temporary storage construction zone area. If we had constructed that, that would have put us over the 1 acre of disturbance and triggered the need for an MPDES permit.
You're not doing
If
that.
removed that from the plan.
You're removing that, okay. Okay, I'm just trying to understand it. I'm not against any of this. I'm just trying to understand it and make sure the documentation's right.
Absolutely.
So Montgomery County Conservation District still has to approve this, am I correct? Or because we're under,
Well, we're under the acre, so we don't need that permit from.
we don't need that one, okay. All right, so again, as I read through this, and again, I've been through enough of this stuff, but I'm just,
Sure.
I just want to, maybe we just update and reword some of these things and document it a little more finely. So what you're building is what's on paper, and I'm happy with that. That's all. It's just, you know, nothing more than that. Nothing bad. Just trying to get,
Never get mad.
you know. I'm done.
Okay.
No, I think he addressed my issue with the conservation and, you know, serving on that board for a number of years, they're pretty strict about dotting the i's and crossing the t's, and you fell below that, so it leaves that problem for you. So, no, I don't have any problem. I'm just amazed how Meadowood keeps working within that box, reconfiguring things, which is a compliment to the people running it, adjusting for the residents' needs there without really expanding. You have expanded in the past, putting the nice homes back there, but in the box that you've had for the past 30, 40 years, reconfiguring that, working within the land you have to meet the needs of the residents, I think you should be commended on that. So, a job well done.
Okay, and John, you are comfortable with final land approval on this particular project at this time?
Correct. We're still going to submit revised plans for us to review. There's some administrative items that are outstanding with regard to sanitary sewer, but other engineering items have been resolved or will be resolved.
So there's still some open questions, but we've agreed to all the framework for those questions. I guess I want to, so I want to support, I guess the concern I always get is if there's loose ends, like we're saying we're good, but we're still working on the pieces. That's where I get tied up a little bit. That's all. And again, we're not materially against any of it, but it's what John's saying is it's not fully baked, or I'm interpreting it that way. And I guess I know what preliminary I kind of said we all sure.
I think your solicitor can share that. She's written a resolution that requires that we
Do the
comply
work.
with all the letters
Right.
and extra permits. And before we record the plans for this and post the money under the developers agreement, we can't get a building permit. So if our plans aren't completely baked, when we come in to record them, they're not getting recorded. We're not getting building permits and nothing happens.
Right.
So I think that's covered in the resolution. Wendy, am I right about that?
Yes, that's the case, and that's been, that is the process that is generally followed in land development. It's been the process here in Worcester for
Right.
quite a long time, that if there are conditions that are required to be satisfied, those are set forth in the resolution. The engineer will review the plans and determine that he is completely satisfied before those plans will be signed off on, before they'll be presented to you for signature. The financial security
Right.
agreements will be prepared by my office. So this is all within the normal, ordinary course.
And nothing gets built until we satisfy all those.
Correct. Correct.
Mr. Chairman, that's my understanding from reading the communication back and forth, that there's still some things that have to be dotted and Ts crossed, but the negotiation with these two is an ongoing dialogue. And from what Kate said, nothing finally gets approved until Wendy and her engineer
Right.
are satisfied that all the requirements have been done. So
Okay.
I think it's working in the right direction.
Okay.
And your security is that we can't build without recorded plans, and we can't get recorded plans unless we
Right.
have a building permit.
Right.
So that's where we are, and the resolution covers that, I think.
Okay. Lou, you have any more questions, comments? I think
I've been through this, and I agree with what you're saying. If we could expedite the paperwork faster, and if you can work with Dan, if they give you a preliminary building start or something, but I just want all the paperwork corrected before you can't just approve it, just, oh, no, I'm gonna kind of sort of do it. It's not how you do it. I didn't go through, I went through, and I know that's not how it's done, but you guys, if you want to push it through, that's fine.
Mr. Betts, I would suggest that any changes or any revisions made to this plan would not be apparent to a layman. A layman looking at this plan set would not visually see any difference in the site plan today versus tomorrow. That is the plan set that Mr. Everts would approve. You know, we're talking about a pipe slope or a size of a rebar in a wall. The configuration of the building, configuration of parking, the landscaping, all of that stuff has been baked and is complete. So we're talking about some minor details and some numbers, not anything that is substantially impactful to the plan itself.
I understand. And again, I'm only working off of our professional engineer that did the report, and I think there's holes in it. So I'm just, again, it can still go through with these two, but I believe you gotta do it. I could inspect it far if it wasn't 100%. And just because I'm gonna kind of put brakes on it, or maybe I'll fix it one day, or can you just put a sticker on it and we'll make it go? I'm not doing that. So that's my perspective in my business. And again, is it technical? Yes. I'm not trying to stop your project. And if Dan can work with you on the beginning of it and start it, some of it, that's great. I just want the paperwork correct, that's all.
Well, but I think we're saying the paperwork is correct. The paperwork is ultimately correct because the resolution has those items all in it in that regard. And they're not driving the car off the lot, in terms of that. So I totally get you. Totally get you. And but slightly, I'm with you.
Go ahead, you guys do it.
Are you willing to make a motion?
I'll make, once again, I think they can't get the final approval to start doing anything until Wendy's satisfied and John's satisfied. So it's just a procedural thing we're working way through.
Sure.
And once again, I guess I'm old school. I like working with my neighbors, and I think I've said before that they've been good neighbors. A lot of nice people have moved into the community from Meadowood, and I think when you can help the people out to move along, I think that's why, somebody has to make a decision about something. And I have the lawyer and the engineer telling me that we can move along. They will make sure that everything dotted and T's are crossed to move forward. So based on that, Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to make my last one. Resolution 2025-17, approving final land development for Meadowood Healthcare Northeast expansion.
Okay. I will second that. So been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Bob? Tim, you can sit down. So.
Bob Andrew, Worcester. For the record, I am a member of the Planning Commission. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Planning Commission. I'm here speaking as a resident. Same opinion I have is one that I've expressed otherwise. I think I never was opposed to the project. I never am not opposed to the project. I think Meadowood is a quality outfit, and I'm happy to expound on my views if that was something that was desired, but that's not why I'm here. I have one question. Does the township have fire marshal approval? And if so, when was it granted?
So my understanding is the fire marshal had a remaining question. That was one of the conditions, but if you could maybe clarify that.
There was a memo provided by the fire marshal, and so the resolution states that the applicant will comply with the condition set forth in the Worcester Fire Marshal Review dated September 26, 2021.
Understood, and I read that. For the record, the Planning Commission, where I, as a member of the Planning Commission, was at a meeting, and we were emphatically told at our meeting that the fire marshal had, past tense, approved this, and it was in hand. That obviously was an incorrect statement.
That is not an incorrect statement. It was approved during the preliminary plan review. It was reviewed by the fire marshal, so it was reviewed twice by the fire marshal.
We were told that it was approved, and clearly it's not approved if there's an outstanding issue. So
It's not an outstanding issue. It's been very specifically addressed, and it is a will comply. It's not even a will comply. The pipe they're putting in is designed for traffic. So it has been reviewed.
That's fine. I knew by coming up here that I knew what was going to happen, but I just wanted to make the record clear that we were told that there was an approval, and if there was an approval, then there's approval. If there isn't, or it's conditional or whatever.
Yep.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Thanks for the comments, Bob. Does anybody else have any public comment regarding the motion that is on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye.
No.
One opposed. Passes 2-1.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your attention. Thanks.
Okay. So next up, we got other business, which is going to be the 2026 budget presentation. So I think we're going to do a little chair gymnastics, Nicole, and then you'll start us, and then Dan, you're behind that, right? All right.
just want to note that this is a draft budget and just a reminder that numbers will change. I'm going to start off with taxes. The budget includes no new taxes and no increase to existing taxes. Worcester Township's real estate tax rate is proposed to remain at 1/20th of 1 mil, which is presently the lowest municipal real estate tax rate in Montgomery County. I expect that we will continue to have the lowest real estate tax rate in 2026. As for personnel, at this time, the Public Works Director doesn't believe an additional full-time laborer will be needed in the coming year. Our current complement of full and part-time employees will meet our needs in 2026. We'll review this issue again as we prepare the budget for next year. Likewise, an additional employee isn't needed in the administrative department, thanks in large measure to our staff who have worked very hard to make operations more effective and efficient. But just like the number of employees in our Public Works Department, the number of employees in the admin department must be regularly assessed, so to ensure we are able to meet our obligations. Therefore, this complement may change over time. As to services, there is no substantive change proposed to township provided services in the coming year. So what we're doing today, we'll continue to do tomorrow. Starting off with the general fund. As to the general fund, first and foremost, this is balanced. At this time, the EIT, our primary revenue, is projected to receive $3.7 million in 2026. The budget includes $3.5 million in EIT in 2025. The budget includes $300,000 in real estate transfer tax in the coming year. $525,000 is projected for this year. This number assumes the transfer of existing residential properties and no transfers of commercial properties and larger tracts of land, which historically have occurred on an infrequent basis. As to expenditures, the budget currently anticipates an increase to health insurance premiums, and the amount of that increase will be calculated at the time DIVIT confirms the amount of rate stabilization dollars available for use. While we wait to receive those numbers, we currently have budgeted a 10% increase from this current year. The budget includes an annual operating contribution to our volunteer fire company at $193,000 and retains a capital contribution in the amount of $172,000. This number does not include the cost of workers' compensation coverage that is provided by the township and is required by state law. Nor does this number include Act 205 pass-through aid to the Department's Relief Association, which is budgeted at approximately $111,000. A new addition to the 2026 budget is the annual contribution for ambulance services, which is budgeted at $100,000. This contribution will help maintain and enhance ambulance operations, including staffing, equipment, and other critical resources necessary for effective emergency care. Lastly, the general fund will transfer dollars to the capital fund at the end of next year. This revenue will provide for needed capital projects. The transfer amount will continue to change and be refined in the coming weeks as we adjust the budget to reflect receipt and expenditures. But at this time, the transfer is projected to be around $713,000. For the capital fund, at the top of the list is the annual road program. The township will continue to provide an augmented resurfacing program, which will help keep our good roads in good condition, maximizing the useful life of the network. The capital fund will provide $793,177,000 toward the road program, which, when coupled with dollars from our liquid fuels fund, will provide around $1.15 million towards the road program in 2026. And remember, this does not include soft costs like design, bidding, and inspections, or the many smaller fixes made by our Public Works Department throughout the year. In addition, the capital fund also funds a bridge repair on Green Hill Road and the construction of other smaller bridge repairs. In addition, the capital fund also funds a bridge repair and guide rail replacements, both on Green Hill Road. Also funded is the Weber Road pipe replacement and an NMS4 project. Some other capital improvements included in the budget for parks and trails include fence repairs at Sunnybrook, installing security cameras at Mount Kirk, Sunnybrook, and Heebner. Lastly, the capital fund will provide for the replacement of public works vehicles and equipment that have reached the end of their useful life, including the replacement of 2 pickup trucks and a mower. The capital budget also includes the purchase of a John Deere lawn rower and new blades for a mower. Additionally budgeted is a mobile aerial lift designed for versatility and ease of use, allowing public works to access hard-to-reach areas safely and efficiently. This new equipment not only streamlines our workflow, but also ensures that we can tackle projects with greater precision and effectiveness. For the sewer fund, as to sewer rates, the budget presently includes a 3.5% increase to residential rates in 2026, which translates to approximately $1.50 per month increase for each home on the township system. A 4% increase to commercial sewer rates is also proposed. Additionally, in 2026, the township plans to hire a wastewater engineer firm to complete a full review of the plants, pumping stations, and our infrastructure to assess their condition. As infrastructure ages and populations grow, it's essential to ensure that our wastewater treatment facilities can handle increased demand. With this study, we will be able to recommend improvements and develop cost-effective, long-term solutions. The sewer fund currently provides $81,000 for capital improvements throughout the coming year. Just like our roadway network, the sanitary sewer system requires regular upkeep to maximize the useful life. Some items included here are new blowers, UV bulbs, and new filters. Also budgeted are monthly expenses for all of the pump stations, such as electric, phone, water, generator expenses, and minor repairs. For the state liquid fuels fund, the estimated 2025 allocation was received earlier this month. A total of $350,000 will be received in 2026, and it's approximately 3.8% less than that received this year. For many municipalities, the annual liquid fuels allocation is the annual road maintenance budget. Worcester does not assume that the annual liquid fuels allocation is adequate to meet our real road maintenance needs, an approach that is more important now than ever before. As previously mentioned, we budget additional dollars in both general fund and the capital fund to meet this obligation. We will therefore offset any decrease in liquid fuels funding with additional dollars to the capital fund. As to next steps, the township will continue to monitor our receipts and expenditures and make adjustments to the budget where warranted. We'll include new numbers when new numbers are received. The budget will be presented again at the November 19th business meeting, at which the board will consider approval to advertise the proposed budget for the required inspection period. The board will then consider the 2026 budget for adoption at its meeting in December.
Thank you, Nicole. As folks from the audience know, the budget is a multi-month process. We had a presentation last month, which sort of starts the ball rolling this month. It's an additional presentation as well as we continue behind the scenes to sort of review the numbers and make sure that we're comfortable with the numbers that are being presented. Dan, I'm going to ask you if you don't mind. There's a couple of there's a couple of changes that I know you had talked about in terms of like the EIT and how we're calculating some of those things. Maybe touch on just a couple of the outliers. A lot of the numbers are pretty consistent year to year, but just maybe you can add a couple of, um, we talked about the EMS and the money there, and just touch on a couple of those items if you don't mind.
Sure. So, I mean, the EIT has traditionally come in a pretty good chunk higher than what we budgeted. How we budgeted this before in the past is our tax collector, Berkheimer, gives us essentially a range of their prediction based off of economic factors that they use. And historically, we've taken the lower end of that number and budgeted that number. In reality, that generally comes in significantly lower than real life. So what we're doing is, and we're going to continue to refine this, as Nicole said, as we get closer to the final draft, is just refine that a little bit. We're not going to end up taking just the low end by default. We're going to be a little bit within that range, but possibly toward the higher end. We're going to take into account other sources, government, reputable sources, government sources, economic predictions for 26. Bureau of Labor Statistics has, annual growth in salary projections, and obviously that's a direct correlation to how much you're bringing in an earned income tax. So all those factors are going to come into play, and the goal really is to just get the tolerances a little tighter on that, so we can show more of the income. We're lucky we're in a position that income is not funding critical programs. It just essentially is a higher transfer to the capital fund at the end of the year. But the goal is to just show a little bit more of that, so it's not at quite as high of a surplus at the end of the year.
Sounds good. We can maybe talk about the real estate transfer. That's another one that seems to, how we budget it and what happens. Maybe they're not always in sync. Those are kind of our two big revenue sources that obviously dictate a lot of everything that cascades behind that.
Yeah, so for the real estate transfer, obviously that's another big chunk of our income. Similar thing, we've always budgeted conservatively, which is the correct decision. I'd want to be clear, but again, we generally have come in a lot lower. We are using predictions from National Association of Research Realtors, NAR, which is very reputable source. There's some other external reputable sources we'll use to try to, again, tighten that tolerance based on 2026 home sales predictions, the value of our homes in Worcester. I think now more than ever in 2026, there is some economic uncertainty kind of rippling through our entire system. So I think budgeting conservatively is still the smart answer. But again, I think we could just tighten some of the screws there to kind of zoom in a little closer and actually hit the nail a little closer on the head there. And that's really the goal. And we'll continue to tweak those numbers as we get into November.
Understood. A couple of other comments. We've talked about, budgeting some money for some concerts next summer. I know the conversation's come and gone on the band shell a few different times, and one of the first steps we talked about was maybe just trying to get a couple of things on the docket to see.
Yes, sir. So we have budgeted in our Parks and Rec fund some funding for 2 to 3 concerts, including essentially a consultant that would be able to get those bands for us, popular bands that would actually have the chance to bring in a crowd using our existing infrastructure and see what the feedback is. Frankly, if we can get 400 or 500 people at some of these concerts, then potentially having that discussion about expanding our infrastructure in Hebner Park or wherever it makes sense would, I think, be a little bit more easy to justify at that point.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Lou or Steve, do you have any comments, questions, items you want to toss out there at this point?
I do, but not on the budget. This is when you're finished and then other business.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think Nicole's really worked it well. We've been over it a few times with her already, and I think there's a few things being tweaked, and I see no problem with it. And once again, I think it's a tribute to the past administration of Worcester Township that we have money in the bank, and we can afford to go out and buy lawnmowers and pickup trucks as needed. It's based on, carefully watching our bank account which will lead me into a discussion as open space and purchasing open space. It was brought up before about maybe having a special fund that people could contribute to it. You know, I made the suggestion 3, 4 years ago about having a fund that people could voluntarily commit to some money. And I think maybe 15 or 20 people, and that was under Tommy Ryan. So it was a while ago that we had 15 or 20 residents contribute to the open space fund, and we're caught between the rock and hard place, investing money to go out and buy property. It's not getting cheap. The price keeps going up. And by sitting on the farm board, we've made recommendations to some people, some neighbors, about preserving their properties. But what the farm board, excuse me, what the farm board can offer, there's guidelines for that. And most of the people with these large properties, they think the value of their land's higher than we can offer them.
Right.
We just had a situation in Upper Salford or the Salford where the township went and spent, I think, $23 million to preserve a property, and they now want to tax the residents, I think, $500 to $600 a year for umpteen years. So it's a tough situation. I think it's something to be looked at. Are the residents in the township willing to pay a fee into this account to try to have liquid money there rather than draining down our assets
Right.
needed to um, take care of our equipment or infrastructure within the township. So I think it's a discussion we need to have in a planning meeting to move forward with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fair enough. So there's no vote that's happening on the budget tonight. If people want to make comments on the budget, they certainly can do that in public comment when we get there. We'll continue to sort of iron it out so that by the November meeting, we'll be ready for be ready for, being in a position where we can advertise at our November meeting. So if there are any additional items or things, just make sure you're communicating those to Dan, and we'll kind of proceed from there. So I think we're good on the budget conversation. Oh, one more.
And the goal is, just so the board is aware, the goal is to have the full draft with the complete breakdown out a full week ahead of the meeting. So rather than getting it out the Friday before, the goal is to get it out Tuesday or Wednesday, the week before, so the public has adequate opportunity to
Couple of
review
extra
each
days.
number.
Okay.
Just there's a couple extra days to review it.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. So moving past the budget, Lou, you've got some other business? You want to?
We're off the budget now?
We're off the budget?
Other business. I just,
Other business, you got it.
the statement I'm gonna make is, and I appreciate Bill McGrain and everything he said. I did attend both past two horse shows behind this building. He made a few comments, and I just want to clarify. One, this property was purchased. It was 5 acres. It was $500,000. Why it's named Heiser Park, I have no idea. He didn't donate anything. I would like it to be renamed Farmers Union Hall. I agree with Bill that we got to do something, and we have this property, and it's not being used. It's sitting there. It was, we purchased it, and if we could expedite the use of the barn in full cooperation with the Farmers Union Hall to store whatever's needed, it's not costing us anything. And I've dealt with different managers over the past, and not Dan, I'm not throwing you under the bus, and it didn't come up lately, but it always fell on deaf ears. And I've been to a Farmers Union Hall meeting, it's the first of the month. So I'd like to find some way to expedite his concerns, and it is heritage, and it's, like I said, 190 years plus. So whatever we could do to cooperate with, and again, I'd still like to rename it Farmers Union Hall. And again, when I first got on the board, the manager wanted to eliminate the horse rink, and I was like, that started another argument. And I'm like, yeah, it's heritage. You're not from here, and you don't understand anything. But I'd like to do some more research and expedite it. And it's been through land plan, like you said, for 3 years. It's really not going anywhere. So I need to.
Okay.
I'll let it go at that.
Fair enough.
I concur with Lou with his statements. We talk about the rich heritage of the township, but we just can't have a barn and stuff all the stuff in it. I think it has to be a little bit of research into how we can display the items. Old barns are nice, but you know, however they're built, we have 3 or 4 on our farm, and just storing stuff and just moving stuff and displaying stuff. I think the thing of a clear span building, a pole building, would make it easier to display the items so people could see them. It's nice to have all this stuff, which we do on our farm. It's all packed in the barn, and you go look for something. It takes you 3 months to move everything around to get something out. And I think if we have all this unique antique pieces of equipment here, I think to be able to share it with the people, we need to have it an area where it can be displayed and people can see it, which would require more room. I think a small barn is not appropriate for the people to visualize it. Um, I'll use Ross Myers as an example. He has a lot of cars, and he just doesn't put them in a garage. He has a really nice display museum up in Boyertown where you can go in and appreciate these antiques. And I think the same thing here in Worcester. If we have this equipment, once again, I'm speaking from my own personal experience in our farm. We have a lot of stuff there, and it gets put in, and someone else gets put in, and somebody else gets put in, and no one ever can see the stuff. So I think it's important to really look at this, visualize it, if we're going to try to maintain the heritage. And it gets back to the 250th anniversary. We have a lot of history here in Montgomery County, especially in Worcester. And I go back once again to the Hebners. They were the inventors of a lot of the first modern farm machinery back in the late 1700s and early 1800s. So I think to follow through with the history is something we could do. So that's another budget item.
Okay. Any other business? You good?
Yep.
Okay. I hear you both. We'll figure something out. Next up is public comment. As always, we ask you to limit your public comment as best you can, but does anybody have any additional public comment? Bob?
Bob Andor, Worcester. So before I get to my things that I wanted to address, I'll just make 2 general comments that were just said. So number 1, Steve referenced the property in Lower Salford. I hope you guys never entertain something like that. I don't care how important that property is. They're saddling them with undue debt. And they, in my opinion, I don't even know the property. I could go look it up, but $23 million for a 65-acre property. That's a very steep premium. And they're basing that on, how they could assess the property for what those uses would be. So
Right.
I don't know that we have any properties like that, but if people are lobbying for a particular development and increasing the value of the property, that's a tenfold premium over, say, Fisher Road. It's an incredible premium to be paid. This
62 acres, 21 million, if you want to be.
it's
A lot of money.
mind-boggling. I mean, good for them, but it's mind-boggling. And the second was a comment that you made, Dan, and I may have misinterpreted or you may have misspoke. You were just referring to EIT and how you take the numbers from Berkheimer and they give you a range, et cetera. But then as you were summarizing it, you said, our numbers typically come in at the lower end of that. And I think you meant to say they come in at the higher end.
Yes, sir. So if I misspoke, I apologize. What I meant to say is we generally have taken the lower range of that number as our budget number. Historically, we end the year at the higher range of that. And what we're trying to do is address that and come in a little bit more realistic in this year's budget.
Understood. And that's how I took it, but then I thought you were referring to the actual revenue that came in and said it typically comes in at the lower end, which was counter to what you would just.
No, it comes in at the higher end. You're exactly right.
That was my understanding.
No, that's correct.
Comments about the budget. It's very difficult because we don't have any detail yet. I understand it's a work in process, and I'm happy to, kind of work through those things. But the only thing that we've been able to glean is what came through from Nicole's presentation last month that was summarized. We didn't see anything in writing, but that was summarized in the form of the minutes. So I looked at those, and then that generally raised a couple questions that I already had. But again, I don't know because we don't have any other detail. And that the frustrating part of that is we're not going to see the detail before November, and then you're going to adopt it. You're going to vote to adopt it the following month. So there's no opportunity to bring up or address inconsistencies or concerns that people have for you to make a modification to move forward. So I don't know how you get about doing that other than getting a month in advance to start having information that people can comment on. So in general, the document that was presented for today is suggesting that there's going to be a capital transfer, which would suggest there's a surplus to the tune of capital 1.139 million. That's a transfer in. And yet last month, Nicole said $970,000. And yet when you look at the general fund, which is where that money's coming from, I think, you take the difference between your receipts and your expenditures, and that gets you a surplus of 780,000. And then just today, she just said 713,000. I understand it's a work in process, but I'm just curious what you guys uncovered that is making you downsize that surplus, and or when we get to the point of having a realization that it is $1 million, what are we doing to do that? In general, some of my discussion would be, I look at the 2025 budget. I'm just going to choose one particular line item. Happens to be a line item, again, off of information I can glean, where there's a significant overage, so clerical. The 2025 budget for clerical suggests you have a budget, 2025 budget of 369,000, and the projected to the end of the year would be 244,000. That gives you a net of 124,000. Okay. And part of that was there was a anticipated perhaps additional staff person. And then Nicole has come before us and said, we're not going to have any, we need to look at it, but we don't anticipate having any new staff. So my own calculation, just using other information that you provide to us, would be that the 244 is somewhere between 244 and 256. So we're in the range. But yet you're proposing a budget for 2026 of the 369 plus a 10% increase, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you're saying, well, we didn't hire somebody, we're thinking about hiring somebody, that's fine. I don't know if that's fine because I don't think you have any intention of hiring somebody. But to then say we're not going to have any increasing staff levels, but we're going to increase the budget 10% over what it was this year, and we have a savings in the range of 35%. I mean, those are the types of things that I have so little detail, but I have right, 6 or 7 questions already, and God only knows what's going to happen when I see the real budget. But we won't have any opportunity. I'll be able to say, hey guys, this doesn't seem right. And you'll say, thanks for your comment. We're going to vote on it next month. And there's no opportunity for somebody to kind of rethink that or reevaluate that. So, and then overall, I mean, just when I speak about budget, it's my understanding that when you pass the budget, that those numbers are written in stone. And they're written in stone the way you approve them. Now, choose any line item. You have $10,000 in that line item. And you spent 12, you went over. You spent 6, you went under. But you can't start arbitrarily moving those numbers throughout the year, saying, oh, that 10 isn't really 10 here. It's going to be 8, and I'm going to move 2 to a different line item. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding that?
So I'm not sure, honestly, Bob. I don't know the answer to that question. It's a fair question, but I don't.
Can we get the answer?
I can give you an answer.
Sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, so with a budget, with a municipal budget, you're right in that you can't transfer money between line items for a lack of a better term. That being said, it is to some extent a living document. So when if something does come up that you had not expected or not budgeted, you're not required. Obviously, if it's some enormous expense, it's something you're going to talk about in a meeting. But if it's something reasonable or something that you didn't exactly budget for, and it's going to put you, say, $2,000 over a $500,000 line item, sure. When we look at that, I go, yeah, we're coming in a little low here. Okay, we're coming a little high here. We're in the right, you're in the right vicinity. We're not physically going, okay, I'm going to change this line item, we're not changing the line items over the course of a year, but it is a living document in that you're making.
I think he's saying the actual expenditure, but I think what Bob was asking is saying you wouldn't change the budget figure.
Correct.
To match.
You should not change the budget figure.
Correct.
You should keep the budget figure.
And
as a perfect example, and not even using Dan's example of a small expenditure, as a perfect example of how, in my opinion, you handled it properly, was you did not budget anything in 2025 for ambulance expenses. And yet you have already started to accrue costs, and then you are now tracking those against a line item of $0. Again, you didn't budget it for it, but you're spending money. We'll know at the end of the year. You obviously exceeded that, but you consciously proceeded that way, which is fine. So my point was, I don't think you should change whether it's $1 or $10,000 or $100,000. You shouldn't be changing that. Yet this document, which you give us every month, which is your budget, you show us what your expenditures are for a particular month. These numbers reflect the budget numbers. But all of a sudden, they're starting to change. And the problem is, when one changes, I have no idea where you're making other changes. You didn't change one line item. It's unreasonable to expect me to go through 400 lines and figure out you took 2,000 here off of this line. You put 800 here, you put 150 there. Or if I only found 2, plus 2 minus 2, and I say, A, you shouldn't have done it, but at least I know what you did. But the numbers are different. So I'm asking you guys to seriously go back and think about doing it properly. It's no different than how I run my business. I bid on a project, I have maybe 15 line items, 50 line items. You have 400. You accrue expenses against those line items. Some you go over, some you go under. If there's a net under, that goes into the profit line item. And in your case, it goes into a surplus. It gets transferred somewhere else. But by virtue of changing these things, it's making it more and more difficult. I'm not a conspiracy theorist as much as some of you may think I am, but it becomes very difficult to try to understand what's really going on. So I respectfully request that you go back and look at what is presented here and correct the deficiencies or the inaccuracies. I'm not quite sure how to just end up the overall question or comment, which would be the surplus. We're in an enviable position that we have a large surplus year in and year out for recent memory. But that's not really happening because the staff is doing a fantastic, super job of cutting corners and pinching pennies everywhere. As Dan alluded to, some of it might be, using a conservative number from the revenue that's coming in and having the actual numbers be higher. That's part of it. I get that. But the expectation is most of that is using a lower number. Dan has now said we're going to try and fine tune that so that we don't have such a large discrepancy. That would be great. But having a more realistic expectation, and I don't know how you would want to do that, whether you could do that, in the sense that when I bid a project, I have demolition, drywall, carpentry, acoustical, mechanical, and then I have a line item at the bottom, overhead and profit. It's what I expect to make. If I achieve that, if I'm right on, I know what I'm going to make. If I save more money during the project, that number goes up. If I spend more money in the project, that number goes down. But that overhead and profit number is really your surplus number. So rather than burying that surplus in all of these individual line items, which is what's happening, it has to be happening to achieve $750 to $1 million in savings every year. And to say, we're spot on, you're not spot on. I mean, you have those savings. It's an unrealistic expectation for what your expenses are. I get the whole concept of things, road supplies. We don't know if we're going to have a big winter or a bad winter. I'm okay with that. You budget appropriately. We have a mild winter.